Good evening, everybody. My name's E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is a nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books. And Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We are delighted to be here with all of you tonight, celebrating Phillip B. Williams' brand new book, Mutiny. We are joined as well by Danez Smith. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce Danez first. Danez is the author of 3 collections, including Homie, which is the winner of the Minnesota Book Award, as well as a finalist for the NAACP Image Award and the National Book Critics Circle Award. Also, Danez wrote Don't Call Us Dead, which was winner of the Forward Prize for Best Collection, the Midwest Booksellers' Choice Award, and a finalist for the National Book Award. Danez's poetry and prose has been featured in Vanity Fair, The New York Times, The New Yorker, GQ, Best American Poetry, and The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Danez is a member of the Dark Noise Collective and is the co-host of the podcast Verses with Fanny Choi. Danez's work employs the confessional and the communal voice to hopefully offer something of use to Black and or queer and or pause readers and whoever else might encounter something useful in their work. They usually live in Minneapolis, currently in Philly, near their people. And they're here to help us celebrate Phillip B. Williams' work. Phillip is from Chicago, Illinois, and is the author of the book Thief in the Interior, which is from Alice James Press. He is a recipient of the Kate Tufts Discovery Award, Lambda Literary Award, and the Whitting Award. He has also received fellowships from the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study at Harvard University and the National Endowment of the Arts. He currently teaches at Bennington College and the Randolph College Low Residency MFA. So I want to welcome both of you and welcome as well the Auburn Avenue Research Library on African American culture and history. Y'all will notice that Morris Gardner, who is our friend from the library and a research librarian, will be dropping chat knowledge throughout. We want to encourage you to go back and review those notes at the ends. Keep your attention kind of with our conversation here, but just know those links are going to stay up in perpetuity. So even after the event ends, if you're like, oh, I want to go back and look at that, they will still be here at this same URL. So you don't have to rush and click all the links. They will stay up. And finally, we love when you tell us where you're watching from. So please shout out where you're joining us from tonight. And if you have any questions, click this Ask a Question button at the bottom center of your screen. You can put a question there at any time, and Danez will help pull them in throughout the evening. If you're on your phone and you have trouble accessing that, you can also put them in the chat, and I will be sure to pull them in to the appropriate spot. So thrilled to have both of y'all here. We are huge fans of both of your work at Charis, so this is a real honor. Congratulations, Phillip, and we look forward to this conversation.
Thank you, ER, and thank you for having us. Thank you, Phillip, for being here. And that amazing shirt, by the way.
It's the watering hole.
Huh?
It's from the watering hole.
Oh, come on, the watering hole. Shout out to the watering hole. One of the best, for poets of color, Black poets, but also extends itself to poets of color, happens in South Carolina in the wintertime. One of the best things I've ever been to. If you are a Black poet out there looking for community, a poet of color who learns a lot from being in community with other Black poets, please apply for the watering hole. That is a great place for you to find community and take your work. So y'all, we are here tonight to celebrate Mutiny, the second collection by Phillip B. Williams. I hope y'all are hype and holding on to your copies at home if you have them already. I hope y'all are hitting those links to buy your own copies if you don't have your own yet, or you put your name on that list at the library, or you're getting ready to steal it from Barnes & Noble or the Amazon warehouse where you work at, however you get in the book. We're excited that you have it. I know for myself, I am just extremely excited to see the second work from Phillip, not only because Phillip is a poet that I admire so much, and not only because Phillip told us we wasn't getting another poetry book for about 10 years, and this one snuck its way in, thank God.
It really
did. But because Phillip, what up, St. Paul in the house, my people. But Phillip is one of the most genuous. We're gonna go with it. Genuous, by which I mean generous and rigorous teachers and educators that I know not only in his classrooms, where I know his students just come out just so moved and so broken open to what they can do, but also through his work as an editor. Phillip blessed my first couple collections with notes, and I know that they would not be the books they are without Phillip's brain. And I think that that spirit of both rigor and generosity, and of honesty, of culling something real and not tainted by sugar, but that is sobering and exhilarating. I think that spirit of Phillip's education shows up here in Mutiny, which is a book that I felt, that I threw up my hands, that I wept, that I got angry, that I got offended, amen, alongside of. And I'm so excited to get into this truly, truly masterful work by Phillip today. Phillip, thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you for being yourself. I love you.
I love you. Thank you for agreeing to do this with me.
Of course. Of course. Anyway, to just be close to you and the work. So we're going to start off tonight. We're going to have a conversation. As ER mentioned, please put your own questions down in the Ask the Question button. If you just want to continue to say where you're at, or just, say your favorite lines, just show your appreciation and your hypeness, your praise. Please continue to put that in the chat. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the poet to read us a couple of poems before we dive into this conversation.
Get it. So if you already have the book and you want to follow along, I'm going to read In the Beginning, which is on page 84, and then I'm going to read Shame, which is on page 71. In the beginning. In the beginning, 6 children jump double dutch in autumn rain, and the rope's helix is a 7th scene. It opens and closes like an eyelid, and through its quick fire lens, the smallest child jumps. Rain in their hair, their bare feet slap concrete church rhythmic as tambourines. I watch the child keep time, then look past them to the other side of the rope twirl's wet eye. Brick tenements cementing my seeing to an ancient memory this game-turned gate into history creates. Was it the door of no return beckoning return, or the doorway to my grandmother's mind, her stroke-stunned body stripped of words, yet heavy with language, blink and cry, her hand tight around my hand, the hospice dizzy with slow minutes. Her moans cradled both curse and confession, and those children, the beneficent's right hand, sing with the words my grandmother lost, a rhyme to heal the days and the whoosh clack of their twin whip turned so fast it whistled, their feet escaping in place. Mercy, even the gods run home in stillness, tossing up a spiritual to greet the falling rain. Down by the river, down by the sea, you came to find your savior, but instead you found me, waiting for the song to end, the shrill voices ringing like boloko bells to trap me there, and the rope's wet pupil shone through to the end of knowledge where there is no slack, where language breaks into molecule and memory, skin as percussion, the glint of diamond in a dope boy's grill, my own tongue fit for babble. A fool's end, an end to 1 million sins, and a single night, the end of confession, of silk, of need, the day's end ending at the rope's ends, end of breath, of sound. Words dropped like seeds to this hard, wet ground.
Woo! Come on, Phillip.
Shame. It begins with a memory of feet, and above the swollen ankles of Grandma Elizabeth's legs, cartographic with varicose veins, bulbous and slurring beneath my fingertips, as I traced what I thought was the blue of sorrow lacing its way like an endless brook through her body, which was a body whose toes I had rubbed one at a time with lotion to the sound of her chewing on a peppermint or breathing slow and hard as I relieved whatever journey from beneath her feet, sour with duty, and the power to make a walk from room to room and to a meal and game of checkers, where I learned that stacking 2 soldiers made a king, which would become useful later in life, as I found myself building lonesome towers with my body and another's, while we cataloged our grievances with the sharing of tongues. And here, one desire usurps another, but I'll mend this memory toward honesty For my grandmother's feet knew speed and precision when necessary, to run across the squeaking floor for a broom, to whack the shit out of me if I frightened her while she exited the bathroom, pausing right as she turned off the bathroom light and let her fingers linger on the doorknob just a bit, as though anticipating the boy me's hunger to hear her scream with a round soprano, "Stupid, you're trying to kill me!" And here again, the truth stalls because beneath me, on the first floor, where her room was a kingdom of perfumes, shawls, and jewelry, this woman up and died while I lay in bed on the second floor, right above her. And I was sure the chill I felt was either her passing through the floor and through me, then through the roof and into the sky where the morning sun was still cool, and from which chickadees dropped their small bodies into the grass for seeds to pulverize in trees. Or it was the angel of my thinking, unblanketing from me my own innocence, knowing that my old lady went somewhere and left her body behind to be found by her children. And for a moment, I was closest to her, just a single story away, meaning the narrative that was the air itself crawling between my floorboards and her ceiling was the last thing we shared, and no one else can have that. And here, the dark bathroom and the metal doorknob with her fingers placed on the chilly arc in the darkness is how she slowly unlocked me from myself, like the sun, unlocked from my body its own shadow. And I hated myself for being so unwilling to let death do what death does, and witness the final days of her hardly sipping water, her lying in bed alone and endlessly tired. And my selfish teenage self is here now, looking up from the cloud of this memory, shaking his head and swearing under his breath, swearing at me even now, too shy or too absurd with shame to run from that old house and into the distraction of maple tree seeds, whirly gigging their papery blades into the weeds and the white fluff of dandelions, and into the street and scream something about it being too much or not knowing how to love then. So lay the fuck off me, man. Just lay the fuck off. So I must forgive him, who is my earlier self, his avoiding that room, his avoiding her eyes yellowed by chemo, his avoiding her feet, and his now missing that cane tapping out the minutes of the day that now his later self holds in the highest regard. As I lay alone to sleep, listening to my downstairs neighbors make love in their softest voices.
Whew.
Thank you.
Woo. Woo. That poem just needs a moment. Oh, my Lord. Woo. How dare you end on that last image? How dare you take it to the neighbors, Phillip? First off, I just want to say just congratulations on this being in the world. And thank you as a reader and as a writer for readying these poems and delivering them to us. They are truly they're doing something, Phillip. They are really doing something. And just like, as a grandma's boy, I just want to say that poem particularly touches me. Having lost grandparents to cancer, loving my own grandmother, these poems sit really right next to the heart, man. All right, Phillip B. Williams, Mutiny. So this poem, let's talk about this poem reaches back. And I love this moment of forgiveness that you're offering to your younger self. Which is an interesting, I think, thing to happen in this book, which is so focused on finality and at the end so much, right? If y'all have the book, or if you haven't got a chance yet, a lot of the poems are structured as like a final poem to something, final first poem, final poem for the crow, final poem for the black bodies, sort of this poet looking and signaling ends to different relationships with certain images or certain concepts and all these things. Phillip, I want to talk about maybe Thief in the Interior for a little bit in its relationship to this book. So I'm thinking, right, so we have this big book, this Mutiny, this Revolt, and all these final poems, which you didn't read from right now, but they imply the poems that come before, both for yourself and for other poets. Are there any poems from your earlier catalog that you think Mutiny is intentionally trying to revise or amend? And I guess, how did you come to this final point, to being done with so many things? And the third question, I'll save the next one for after that. I'll load you up too much.
Yeah. Also, if we can do the screen where we're split and Danez is of equal size to me, I would like that a lot.
A little.
You're little, yeah.
Ooh, now
you're taking over. I think, well, one of the poems, and I can't even remember the name of those poems in Thief in the Interior, but there is, well, there are a lot of poems in there that deal with like the Black Dead. Mm-hmm. The Spitting Noose Clears His Throat is one of them. Mm-hmm. And in Mutiny, I really tried to avoid those kinds of poems. So maybe those aren't revisions, but it's revision of this idea that this is something in particular that I would like to continue to do. I mean, I do still consider myself a kind of a poet of elegy, mm-hmm. but to think of it in a grander scheme, like what is the conversation around the possibilities of an elegy if we don't directly name? Because there's a kind of a way that, whether I was doing it or not, I mean, many can argue that I was, that it can become commodification, right? And so with Mutiny, there is the poem Tabula Rasa, which is my way of rethinking and revising what does it mean to write these public elegies. So that's one. And then there's Black Witch Moth, mm-hmm. with the dead bull and the dead child, and trying to rethink, okay, so what is the impetus toward using dead animals? Like what do they symbolize? What do they signify? What kind of vulnerability am I avoiding by placing that on an animal as opposed to placing it on a person, right? A human, mm-hmm. or even including myself in that narrative. So Mutiny, I wanted to really investigate more so the imagination as reflexive, and a self-critique that pretty much could also be taken by others as saying, oh, well, maybe this is about me too. And like it could be, sure, but all of the poems in there are first and foremost poems that I had to use to really investigate my own interiority.
Word. So much in there I want to get to. And first, I will say I was somebody who read the book and I was like, this is about me. Or that I've done these things and I felt like, and it didn't come, I think it didn't come without feeling like you were implicated, right? So it didn't feel like a read in that way. But it was really, it felt like a shucking sometimes to see you sort of doing away with these images for yourself and feeling maybe like implied in some of your we when that was extended. I also had to contend with myself as a writer a lot, writing this collection, right? And thinking my own self as an elegist. There was that one image of the boy waiting near his grave for the poet to stop killing him again. Yeah. Right? Which feels like in itself a critique of elegy and how you were using it, how you see other poets using it. But then we have poems like Shame, like we just heard, which is such an elegant and tender elegy for a grandmother figure. And I'm wondering, as an elegist to elegist, as you started to comb over and critique your own writing, to critique as you're like extending that lens towards the field of poetry as well, how did your own relationship to elegy change? Did any of your rules for what you sort of apply that elegiac lens to morph as you were making this book? And were there like sort of tools for your own elegy making that you had to put down in this process? And
yeah. I mean, I think the first is to personalize it. So who do I know for sure? Who do I know? And also, is there grace? And if needed, is there forgiveness? Shame didn't need forgiveness, but it needed grace. It required me to talk about this woman who I grew up with. She had always been on the first floor, and I always been on the second floor. My room was always above hers. And so there was that intimacy of just where we were placed architecturally. And then, of course, I would see her every day, and I didn't see her anymore. So I had to be very cognizant of how I represented her. What do I want people to know, and what does she have the right to privacy for? And that has to be applied to, I believe, everyone. And then there's the father poems, all of those are elegies because he's dead. And I'm still thinking of grace, but those also required forgiveness. So I wasn't castigating the man. Still had to tell the truth about it. But I think those two ingredients were newer ones for me to move with generosity, which is what I'm thinking of as grace. How do I show as much of the best of these people as I can? And then when necessary, how do I move with forgiveness so that the poems aren't just racked with this irreparable pain, you know?
Thank you for that, Phillip. I kind of want to go, I think, now to the other side of grace, which I think is that critical and biting edge that misery has, that I don't think is without grace. I want to say that. I don't think it's done without grace. So there are poems that are very rigorous, and I think almost I think you're not a poet that people should go to if they only think poems should feel nice and pretty and joyful. Right?
Oh no, that's the worst idea. That's a bad idea.
I think in reading this work, I was really reminded, I think, of the true power and discomfort in poetry. Right. One of the poems that made me think about that was Final Poem for the White Editor, and how it employs both minstrelsy, a critique, and that minstrelsy of like sort of puppeting this white editor, right, still comes back, and you feel implicated as the Black writer being asked these things, being, made minstrelsy. I'm finding my own poems in the poems that they asking for. But it feels, I'm just wondering how you manage critique, because it did feel different, I think, at times where you were like sort of being saying, let's be real about America, about whiteness, about the West, about what capitalism does, about how poets participate in that. And there was a different edge where maybe it felt like you were looking at a more beloved peer that you still wanted to say something hard to. How did you manage your sort of critical lens in this collection? Where did you find yourself, if ever, scaling back, or maybe having to find a different way in? And where did you find yourself knowing that you needed to lean in and go harder to really address and sort of call forward and eviscerate the truths that you're like really doing in this book?
And by critical, you don't mean scholastic, you mean critique, like the
yeah.
I guess it depends on the poem, because for me, where I'm coming from, I think most of the poems have that kind of edge to them. For me, it's a book of just diving into the anger, right? As opposed to just pointing at it and hoping that you don't offend anybody by saying, oh, I was angry at this moment, but I don't want to. Let's talk about the flowers. I think there's a balance between in Mutiny. Hopefully, there's a balance between the critique, but then also the idea that there's something else that's possible. And I think that's part of my answer to your question, is leaving space for other possibilities, even though I'm trying to navigate through the idea of getting rid of, for myself, so much weight of what is typical to poetry, whatever, like the deer being dead in everybody's poems. Like, okay, so what do I do with that? And what does that mean? What is that really saying about us as a community? And not as a critique, but as an observation. Like, okay, if we keep going to the dead animals, particularly the deer, what is under that? And what do we mean by that? What are we really trying to say? How does the deer maybe help us with that? And how does it not help? And so I'm hoping that there are some poems that are just like, no, fuck this don't work. Like, we're not going to do that anymore. Like Order of Events in particular is one of those poems. Or the mascot poem with the white editor who just loves some black pain. So yeah, those don't really have much space for anything other than what they are, which is, no, this is anger, and there's not going to be anything other than that. But then in Black Joy, which is a poem that is extraordinarily angry, but does not necessarily allow that to end the poem, it just takes up the majority of the poem. There's, for me, a way that it becomes, in a strange way, it becomes a prayer. It becomes, there's a lament. It becomes just this release that I think, in that release of anger, it also sings. It also is, by pointing to all of the things that it wants to critique, is making a song of that.
Word, beautiful. Phillip, I think that's an excellent transition. Would you actually read Black Joy? And I think that would be a great way to go into this question from Kwame that we have in the comments.
Yeah, cool. Black Joy. I would like to help someone to live after my death, written on a donor card. The collective moan in Greater Whitestone Church had a body to it that I saw as a child and mistook for love itself, built from the silk of sobs in the sanctuary. The moan, a language that is said to confuse the devil out of knowing your business, was itself a confusion of visions. The coming into being of liminality itself, for neither joy nor solace triumphed in the relentless catechisms, the wails that were pure pain tossed up to the ceiling or rocked from the gut to the floor. Lay your burdens down, said the pastor, but they would not stay down. Every Sunday, hymnals sopped up sorrow after sorrow that had no navigable ending. Every Sunday, my grandmother called upstairs to my mother to see if we were going to service with her, and we did. And I saw the mostly elderly congregation greet her as Sister Williams. And I remember how, when I was a teenager, church no longer a pastime, my grandmother died, and no one who loved Jesus came to send her on her way to him or visit her in her living illness. Limbo, purgatory, the church the gateway to non-existence, a holding cell for the deceased, the wanting to die. That you can be clean does not mean you can be made clean. St. Liminal visited last night in their fog body that smelled of perfumes and back of the throat, frozen birds that paraded atop women's heads, and funk in a neck dips decanter. I asked, what happened to joy? It had been many mornings. It was supposed to come then. St. Liminal tilted their head to their shoulder and spoke from their ear in the voice of 3 octaves striking the air at once. They said, Hennessy drips from the poplars, this crucial conflict, this hay in the middle of the harm, feeding the beast in this burning barn, in the naysayer's veins, this history dripping in the Hennessy, this blunt incantation, leathering thick black lips, this shoe shine grin, this, if you grin, I'll let you live, this, I'm alive and I'm enough, half lie, this loving and living off the dead, this happiness in spite of this happiness in spite, this mistake that you must sing because you happy and because you free and not because grief has a song. This wingless sparrow for an eyeless god. This singing when Tim survived Chicago but was shot in Cali somewhere. This singing and he's still dead. These black scholars demanding joy, laughing to the bank with stolid books written with inflexible air of moralistic angst, with hands that push out, push away the Tims, and Tim's body the only prelude you know. This activist laughing, face smashed on concrete on a police car's hood, and the cops laughing and they laughing together. This noose in the history museum, stunned in its headless gasp. This noose on your head you call your burden, your inheritance, your nuance. You use an Emmett Till like a mirror, a muse wearing his gin fan like a Pulitzer. This noose on the doorknob, your reflection convex in the past tense. Shine they call you and you do. You grin, you show your still yours teeth, those souvenirs in the dusk, those stones marking an ever-living grave. And St. Liminal straightened their head and touched that once talking ear to their shoulder and spoke in rain, playing a drum. I am the archangel draped in pigeon feathers. I read insignias carved into your pathos. I translate sand sifting from top to bottom. I arrange stars in man's imagination to constellate prisons for gods and maps to an ordinary freedom. I speak all the world's languages lost and here and yet to come. But when you ask of joy's arrival, I see nothing but a line bisecting stone and no water leaks forth. Nothing but a wooden dog pierced in its back with nails. I see joy erasing the one who seeks to be modified by it. I see the legible scratched illegible by an always forthcoming validation. Joy come in the morning. It is here, an eternal night. When they left, the sun had come up, but joy was still absent, which meant the sun was not real. I grabbed a stone and threw it at the sky.
Woo! Call it out. And sit with that shit. All right. So Philip, I'm wondering if we might go to Kwame's question, which I think might have some use coming out of that poem. So where I'm trying to figure this question out. I think Where in the space of acknowledging the prior presence of Black and brown bodies, does the celebration at the end still sit as a telling of being? In other words, how are you particularly finding ways of articulating the being without regret? Can you get something from that?
Articulating the being. What does that mean?
That's the part I think where I get caught up on. I'm wondering, like, how I think that maybe this question is asking, Kwame, if you want to offer an additional follow-up in the comments, that would be great. But maybe is asking something about sort of the celebration at the end. I wonder if that's talking about a particular poem or about the book, or maybe just as a tool for poetry, how we always tend to end celebration. I guess, how do we manage that balanced against regret or without regret?
I think celebration can, celebration is a word that I don't know quite what to do with, which is not questioning or indicting the question. I just don't see I'm not a celebrator in that way. I celebrate other things and other people, and I'm learning how to celebrate like myself. So what I'm doing is I'm thinking about what that word even really means, and I don't know how to apply it to the work that I'm doing in the poems. So if I'm thinking of maybe this being part of the larger conversation, how do we balance, telling the truth about those who are killed, those of us who are, abused, oppressed, but also leaving space for this idea of joy or maybe even celebration. I think if you're telling the truth, then both are going to come to the surface. If you're telling the complete truth, right? And this is beyond fact, where fact is, this is what happened, this is the time it happened, these are all documentation. Truth is like those facts filtered through a kind of subjectivity. So if our subjectivity is one that's always morose, I'm not really sure if that's truthful, because there's different sides to that. And I think I'm the one who's replacing the word celebration, the being meaning the present and the living. Absolutely. And there has to be space where we mourn and we can be angry and sad about it, but then we also have space where this is what my breath feels like. This is what it feels like when somebody touches me, whether I love them or we got some complicated feelings. This is what bread smells like. This is what my eggs taste like. I like hot sauce. Petrichor, rain, the smell of the rain on the grass. How do we always involve possibility outside of what has been taken from us? And that's not easy to do. I'm not saying I do it all the time, but I'm saying if we're talking about, this idea of the living and the dead, to not privilege either. And one of my critiques in Black Joy is this idea that the dead are always already made into this beautiful ancestor, and the living, they should take over everything that we think about. Joy, happiness. I'm like, that's violent. Like, that's violent. It's a silly way to think about those who have been killed. And it's not really a way that allows for the living to have the vastness of our experiences. So I think
it's a false like revolutionary expert, right? It also and I felt caught in this, like I felt like and I'll talk about my own work. I feel like I'm writing a lot of poems. It's like, nigga, what was you writing for 4 years that was so joy focused? Because really it felt like there was a time when, on the heels of the Black Lives Matter movement, right? And let's just say that as like sort of a resurgence in like media attention, right, on like Black people being killed systematically and randomly in this country, it felt like the answer to that, right, was like, okay, we've been through all these killings, so we're gonna be happy. So we're gonna be happy, right? Like, our answer to our murder is joy.
Right.
And that felt like the media being mass media, and also being like, sort of the Black joy issues of every magazine that came out, and Black boy joy and Black girl, right? That all felt like this impossible answer to the violence that we were going through was smiles. And I think that's what I really love about this poem, that like you're saying, it doesn't end. You throw that stone into the sky, we don't end with like, there's still something else possible. And I feel in the beginning of the poem, right, that it is not tempering with what is a sacred space of that space of the church, right? you're not damning that. You know, I feel like
No.
that's, you know, that is allowed to be sacred within the poem. But of us, the poem makers, the all that's, right? Like there is a true danger in the falsehood of joy, right? I guess I just thank you for calling it out, because I felt this was one of those poems that I read and I was like, damn, nigga, you need to write some different poems.
Oh no.
Or it just put it on the table, right? It just said
yeah. What I'm going to say what else is possible throughout the entire conversation, but I think, and not to even belabor this because we got to move on, but for me it was this idea that the joy was presented, but I didn't know who it was for. I don't need convincing that I feel joy. I am the person in this Black body who has smiled, and I call my mama, and I have my friends. So I didn't know what all the, like, who was being uplifted by that, while simultaneously, you know, there is, like, for me, it seemed as though there's a kind of logic to it, like, because we're being bombarded by the media, because the media was, you know, that's its own conversation about how they show us being killed, right? So maybe this is a response to how we can navigate through that. And so I have sympathy for that, but that's just not where I was.
Amen. I want to go to this other question by Ariana, who says, Philip, Mutiny is a collection that is so full, practically brimming with linguistic dexterity and puppeteering of diction and syntax. I agree. I wonder if there are ever moments where you feel your own language is running away from you as you write, and if so, how does revision or editing allow you to tame what may run wild on the page, or is taming something you actively deny or resist?
With Mutiny, I actively denied it for quite a few poems. Maybe it's noticeable. I think with Black Joy, I didn't touch Black Joy. It is what it is. And thank goodness for that. But with like a poem like Mush Mouse Maybe Crown, I have to revise that. It's only so many M words that make sense together. It's, but you know, if it's going to be like a mini, let's say it's a mini craft lesson, they're for me, it was, what is the poem saying, and does the energy of non-revision assist with that? The answer is usually no. It's rare that you don't have to, like, if you are building a chair and that chair is got 3 legs and the 4th one don't seem to fit, you can sit in it, you know, but that construction, it's a little precarious. And I feel the same way about poems. It's just poems don't have that clear and present danger as sitting in a messed up chair does. But I do think that there's still structural things that can happen. So I do try to sonically follow whatever the sublime is, what is just too big for words, but then to pick the precise word and make sure that the precise sound is there so that it has some kind of incantatory feeling. It's only one poem in there that has not been touched at all, and that's Black Joy. But then the others, you know, they run their courses, but there's still some things that I tweaked there so that it could still sound like there's a world being built, and that the images are precise and make sense together.
Right. Could we talk a little bit about just like your form and your sonic structures and how that comes to you in your process? Like, when does ludicrous sort of enter your usefulness as in a poem, right? Where you're doing rollout, right?
Right.
So yeah, so when sort of do you, I guess from the beginning, or is it in the middle of a revision that you're sort of reaching for like sonic impulses to like layer yourself on top of? And also, did you find yourself, because I'm thinking about Mutiny, you're revolting or sort of like saying you're done with so many images and concerns. Did you find yourself done with any forms or any forms of images and poems, any structures that you also find yourself saying this has no use for me?
Well, clearly not the sonnet, because that I can't get rid of the sonnet for nothing.
The sonnet is too strong.
The sonnet is too strong. The grip is too strong. Got that gorilla grip. The sonnet is powerful.
And you love, I was really happy to see a comeback of the acrostic sestinas.
Oh yeah. I had brought that back from an older chapbook because it just fit, you know. But I think I remember the question. So a lot of that stuff happens. I move first with either image or sound.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll just come up like, oh, this is really a weird image that I came up with. This deer has a sword in his antlers. Well, let's see what I can do with that to play with it. Or I'm writing a line and I like the pacing of it. And so it's just exploration after that. And so Ludacris popped up because there were so many questions being asked and it just fit the pattern and it popped into my head because there were so many interrogatives in it. I was like, well, if Ludacris want to make an appearance, let's do that. Let's
I loved it.
allow it.
Man, I was like,
and so that's following the pattern, right? That's a craft question. That's a question of not even just revision, but vision. How much of vision is intentional, and some of it is, and some of it just happens to, fit within a pattern or it comes from inspiration. So I can't say that I've always intentionally done a thing from the forefront. Sometimes it just happens that way because of a sonic ritual or an image system.
Word. Okay. Can we talk a little bit? I love the spiritual tensions. I don't know if they're tensions or harmonies, right? So there's already, I can kind of tell, right? You was born either like Baptist or Kojic or something, I'm assuming.
Baptist.
You have like, there's the Lord is very present, but or at least that is a linguistic sort of thing that Black folks do. God is very much in Black vocab. But there's also all these great African myths that are woven through the collection that you're reaching towards. Can you talk about how the employ of those African myths sort of came to you from Mutiny? And was there sort of a tension? I think you're sort of divorcing yourself from all these canonical images and stuff like that. How did those two things interact with each other? The canonical thing and then this invitation to these, I don't want to say more indigenous in mythologies, maybe?
I mean, this is the Afro-Diasporanfolk, they're from all over the Caribbean, the continent itself. I want to say that, well, one, I grew up loving Greek mythology because I like monsters. I like monsters a lot. And they had all the monsters. And their monsters were cool. It's like, oh, this brother got one eye. Okay, let's see what happens. And then just, to see these hybridities, like a bird with a lion's body. So I was really into what Greek myth allowed. And it wasn't until I got to school where I saw that Greek myth was privileged over everything else. And I didn't think anything of it. I was like, okay, well, Greek mythology is like the standard mythology. And then the Egyptians popped up. I was like, oh, I didn't know. Okay, so they got gods too. There's Isis, there's Osiris, there's, Nephthys. And most recently with Mutiny, I was trying to figure out all the ways I can shrug off anything Western. Like, how can I just get away from all of this stuff? And as someone who's been, reading more books about hoodoo practice and about all of the other traditions that show up in the book, and building friends with folks who are actually practitioners of Santeria, Palo, Lukumi, it was one of those things where I'm starting to live a life that is very far from the life that I guess was expected of me to live when I was being raised. And it's less of a performance of let's put all of this stuff in here and reaction to the Western. It's just stuff that I've been really getting into, like delving into and researching and having conversations with. And I wanted to give it space, the space that I thought it deserved, as I would with anything else that is in my life that I put in my poems. So that's why when there are like the centaur or the maenads, when they're in there, they're either being destroyed or they're helping destroy something Western.
Word. Be thinking! Ooh! Phillip be thinking, y'all. I saw a question from Kinesia, who y'all Kinesia a little bit. Y'all need to go get them books. Congratulations, Kinesia, and all the because you're just brilliant and you deserve everything that's coming to you. So Kinesia says, Phillip, huge congrats on this brimming work. And hello, darling Danez. Hello.
Thank you.
If we can draw Philip's great phrase, maps to an ordinary freedom, into a kind of conversation between homie and mutiny. There are two books. Can you comment on what sense of freedom you envision write from or otherwise pull into the coordinates of the ordinary?
What's the coordinates of the
coordinates of the ordinary?
Of the ordinary. Man, well, ordinary freedom. Ordinary freedom. I'm trying to think when I wrote that, what I was pointing towards. And I think I remember that I know the context now, but the original context was a little different. And I think more true to what I was trying to do. And I kind of leaned away from it. And so a freedom that is outside of what you'll find in a textbook or what you hear at a lecture, where it's this elevated idea of, so this is I'm gonna be facetious. I'm not trying to be no kind of way, but you know how I am. Like, this is the abolitionist protocol of how we, like, that's not the ordinary. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you wake up in the morning, are you going to eat oatmeal or are you going to eat bacon? What are the decisions that you make? And how do you live your life? And how does that show that you have a life that deserves to be lived? The fact that you can make these decisions and can't nobody say shit about it because you want oatmeal that morning. And it's the simple things that for me were the most empowering once I realized that I can actually do this, and it's because I want to, and it makes me happy. And even if it's something that makes me sad, maybe I'm choosing to be sad in this moment because that's what I need. So when I say ordinary, I mean the absolute mundane that does not have any attachment to the academy, any form of philosophy, religiosity. It's just, you have a self. How do you navigate with that self? I think you do that. I mean, that's what homie to me is about. Like, you got a poem about somebody getting jumped and they're like, this might not be so bad. It might not be so bad.
Yeah. But it's true. It might not be so bad. Maybe it's good. At least I get, and low key, the bottom of that poem is, at least I ain't getting shot.
At least I can live with a broken bone as opposed to a dead body. Right. They love me enough to whip my ass and not to kill me.
Exactly. And maybe I indeed deserve to get my ass whooped. We ain't gonna talk about what led to the jumping. That's what the poem is for. I might have had it coming.
Oh my goodness.
Oh Lord, I love that. I love that, Philip. I wonder, Philip, too, about just like the life of you as a poet coming out of this book, writing it, releasing to the world. How do you see yourself walking differently as a poet in this field, in this world, after writing this collection? What do you feel? Is there anything you feel like you picked up during it? Anything you feel like you finally put down in a way?
I'm free. I'm so free. Ooh, I feel like Celia on the back of that car doing this.
Oh,
yeah. Somebody asked me, like, what does it feel like to have Mutiny out? I was like, this is the best feeling. This is the best feeling. Now to go back to celebration, I think I definitely, in my own way, celebrated Mutiny by allowing people to celebrate me. With Thief, it was just like, all right, the book's out, there are things to do, gotta navigate. And I was in a space where I couldn't really sit with it the way that I wanted to. There was too much happening. And with Mutiny, I could take my time, I could absorb some stuff. It pretty much is a book that I say belongs to me. It's mine. And I feel a spiritual release. I feel the happiest I've ever been, relaxed. I'm eating good. It's good. It's been good. It's been good.
Good. Oh, that makes my heart so happy. Okay. Y'all, if you have any more questions, I'm encouraging you, we're winding down, to go ahead and put them in. So last call for questions. Philip, I'm wondering maybe if you would read another poem for us.
You want me to pick it, or you got one?
Do I want to pick it? What about because it's so, no, that might not be where the energy's at right now. I love Final Poem for the Field of Poetry. Why don't we hear one of the final poems? I don't think we've heard any of those.
Okay. How about, I need to look at the table of content because the final poems are in particular the heaviest poems in the book, some of the heaviest poems in the book. But
maybe final poem for the moon, or is the war poem what a final poem, or is that
order of events or final poem for war during the war?
Hold up, I'm trying to go back.
I mean, there's also a final poem for
which one starts questions for the war poem to hold?
Yeah, that's final poem for war during war.
Okay. Yeah, why don't we do that or final poem for the moon? Your choice.
Yeah. I mean, it's also final poem for the deer.
Oh, ooh, we talked about that one, so why don't we hear it?
Yeah, let's do that one. Okay, page 40. Final poem for the deer. Deer asleep on the side of the road. No, deer dead there as always, preserved in the book of symbols. Deer with its flies and uncanny arrows in its sides like compass needles or fleshless wings. Deer whose hooves puncture names in the snow. Deer who knows your name. Deer, a white-tailed Gnostic in the woods. Deer you get lost in. Deer with a ribbon of brass bells around its neck and an iron sword in its antlers altar. Deer emperor, surveying a funeral from afar, hoofing open cracks in the vagaries of the fool who wanted a deer. Deer in the mind taking place of the deer, always its assignment. Here, the casket carrying the father is a deer. 4 cloven hooves upon the red carpet, a blown-up photograph of the father's past face, a road sign saying the future is still. Boy who refuses to view his body's father, afraid of the face he will not recognize, for addiction has its way with flesh. Deer casket marching out the church to where the earth is gentler to flesh, strips it patiently. Deer carrying the dead in its spine cradle. The scent of pears beckons from the bassinet of bone. The dead carrying the dead. The arrows in the deer tremble toward their cardinal affairs. The skin someone forgot the feel of. The mama who never said goodbye. The daddy whose belly rolled on its side like a truck-crushed deer. There is no daddy here. The father sits up in his casket, startled, his funeral full of his sons. No, his one son repeating like a paper cutout. A forest of sons in which the deer tilts its decorous head into the father's grave and sips.
Woo! That is the last damn deer poem, y'all. That's it. This one and Taylor Johnson's. That's it.
Yeah, those are only.
That's it. Y'all gotta be specific. Y'all gotta write about does and bucks now. Y'all can't write about no more deer.
The oxen. Get the oxen in on this.
Oh, get the oxen in. Come on, get some elk poems in. How about that? Okay, I think we're gonna maybe end on this question, which I love. This is basically an endorsement for Philip's Twitter. If y'all don't already follow Philip, he is a great follow and often posts these really, really great writing prompts for y'all to get to. So this question is from Kerwin Sutherland. Hey, Kerwin, what's up? Great Philadelphia poet. Who says, where is generating poetry prompts situated in your poetic practice? Do you generate prompts daily? How do you choose which prompts to share with the public and which ones to use for yourself?
Oh, that's an interesting question. That's a nice question, Karen. The prompts are not for me ever. I cannot do a writing prompt. I can't do writing prompts. I used to be able to because I used to get them in school. Like they were like, here's a prompt, do this. But now I look at them and I'm kind of like, I don't know what to do. Just so it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. Just where I am now, I can't utilize them. In Mutiny, the poem, what is it? Of how the question of self and how it never quite gets answered. That is a prompt from Carl Phillips, that he gave when we were at the Kenyan Review writing workshop. And so, like I said, I used to be able to do them, but I usually just make them because people asked for them. And I'm like, that's something I can do. It's an easy thing to do. It doesn't require anything for me to like sacrifice other than time. I don't necessarily share the ones that I give my students, especially not the ones in the MFA because they paid for me to help them. So, after some years, I might slide in one, but no, I come up with them at the time that I write them. And I think about, whether or not it could be useful, if it's even a good one. And then I post it. It's more so a thing where I'm like, somebody might have fun with this one. So let's see how it goes.
Word. Beautiful. That has me thinking about just like, the prompts and who's come out of the side of that. Your poems, I'm just wondering, it's so freeing and it's so yours, this book. But I'm wondering, Phillip, what did you expect? What do you expect of or hope for your reader? The people receiving these poems, because even from first poem you're addressing us. So yeah, what do you expect of us? What do you hope for us that we walk away with?
I hope y'all get a dictionary and look up the words you don't know. First and foremost,
there's a lot for me.
Get a dictionary because it's part of that's how you participate in the work. There's nothing in this book that is bigger than any of us, And if you don't want to do the dictionary, then just read it for sound. Just be part of the experience of the poem in whatever way possible. Don't give up on them. But yeah, get that dictionary. And if you're a poet who's reading, or someone who, folks are like, I'm an aspiring poet. You're either a poet or you're not. Do you write poems? Okay, you're a poet. Let's just be real. So if you're someone who loves poetry and you're writing it, just read it as a textbook. I'm saying that's something you should do with all of the books of poetry that you read. You read them to learn. Don't steal nothing, but really like engage with it, talk with it, converse with it, debate against it. Share with your friends. Like, read this, tell me what you think. Make it a part of your life, as you would anything that you really care about. And if you're someone who's not really into poetry, just finish the book. Just finish the book.
Not just finish the book. They better finish. You bought it. You better finish it. 2.5 read books on all of our bookshelves. Okay. We must finish the books that we start, y'all.
Mine included. My bookshelf is full of incomplete reads.
Look here. But I will also endorse Poets. Y'all need to finish this one. I think it is, although it is a very rightfully and justfully angry collection. I think I took it as marching orders, and I feel like my words and my poems were realigned after reading this collection. So y'all go get your backs broke. That sounded no, my spine.
That sounded perfect.
That's fucking get your back broke by Mutiny, y'all.
Actually, I can read a last poem that somebody's getting their back broke a little bit up in it.
Yes, we love that.
Just a little bit. Final poem as Nocturne into Obad or Sunrise. I do not find Osun in somebody's son I sunned, while his gold front splashed a summer dress in the back of me, bucking to be ridden by his tongue, like his Virginian drawl was first to get down my draws like that. Not everything masculine is mine, but I make him mine for modernity. 60-watt bulb spun mosaic by ceiling fan, and this bed creaks like a church pew, and it was Sunday when he came, so he my Sunday man. Though I prefer Thursday man's selflessness. Before returning to his lover, he balances sunlight on his tongue tip. He parts my legs to gift. My hairiest part yawns like a waking bear.
Phillip the Stallion, everybody.
Phillip.
Oh, you can write a nasty poem. I love a good Phillip Williams nasty poem. I love.
They're seldom, but they exist.
And come on, I prefer Thursday man selfless. We love it. Phillip, thank you so much.
Thank you, Danez.
It's always an honor to sit with you. Thank you to Charis Books down in Atlanta for having us, and ER, if you're there, come on.
Yeah, yes, you are.
Thank you both so much. We're really honored to have you. This is so beautiful. Thank you to everybody watching at home. We really appreciate you. It really does help us when you buy the books directly from Charis. So that teal button at the bottom of your screen, that is how you can buy Mutiny or any of Danez's books directly from us. We will ship them out ASAP. And we are just really grateful to y'all for supporting independent bookstores. Final thing I'll say is that I'll be adding captions to this and putting it up on our YouTube channel. And we would encourage you to please share that link because it's more accessible and more people can watch it that way. So keep an eye out, and that'll be up within 24 or 36 hours. So we appreciate all of your support. We hope everybody stays safe and well. And until next time, please take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ER. Thank you, Charis.
Have a great night.